What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got some very good news for you in terms if you're like a big Colin Sexton fan and a Sexton fan, I guess, with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Well, they're now currently being reported that the Cleveland Cavaliers are very close to a contract extension potentially with Colin Sexton, and they're currently working through the details right now. It is being said that Kobe Altman, who was the general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers, actually did say, we want him here long term, and he wants to be here long term, and we're working through things with his representation. We'll take care of things behind closed doors, Kobe Altman said. Now, I believe he actually said this at Media Day, of course, is being reported by multiple different people. It is really interesting to me because the Cavs did obviously explore a potential trade with Colin Sexton, and some people were like, it's so stupid, Colin Sexton, he averages 24 points per game. Why would the Cavs want to get rid of Colin Sexton considering he's their best player? But if you're like a big Cleveland Cavaliers fan like myself who watches pretty much nearly every one of their games, you'd probably know that there might actually be a good reason why the Cavs were actually investigating a potential trade for Colin Sexton. When the Cavs were their best last season, it was when Darius Garland was the main point guard on the court and had the ball in his hands 100% of the time on the court. The Cavs looked way better. Their ball movement looked really good. It actually looked like their offense was running through someone. You look at teams like, you look at the Lakers, offense runs through LeBron. You look at maybe the Nets. Kyrie Irving decided to go sit to the side and let the offense run through Harden. The Hawks, it runs through Trae Young. The Cavs seemed like they had an identity issue where they were running the ball with, the offense through both of these players when they were both on the court at the same time, which just didn't work at all. And it hasn't worked for such a long time. But when Colin Sexton actually just spent some games injured and Darius Garland ran the offense, the ball movement looked really good. Garland's assist numbers, he was averaging like 9 per game and was still managed to average like the 17 points still. And the team actually really looked fluent. Even though it might not have been winning some games, the Cavaliers just looked like a really fluent team and their ball movement looked really good. And you only can think if the Cavaliers were actually get role players in that team, which it looks like they've done, bringing in some shooters like Lauri Markkanen and getting Kevin Love back from injury, that team might actually have a really nice ball movement going forward. But then when Garland was injured and the ball was run through Sexton, the dude was averaging like 30 points a game. Don't get me wrong, he was scoring freakishly and his assist numbers went up to like 6 per game. But the offense didn't exactly look that fluent. It didn't look like the ball movement was really that good, and it definitely didn't look like it was as good, to Darius Garland's ability. Now, here's the thing. The other thing that goes into this right now is if you keep Colin Sexton, you have an issue with Colin Sexton, not realizing that the ball needs to be ran through Darius Garland, where it kind of comes into a situation is, are they going to run the ball together? Is the offense going to run through both of them on the court? If so, can they eventually figure out a way to do it? Teams have done it in the past. Look at Kyrie Irving and LeBron James. The offense ran through both of them when they were on the court. It's going to happen with LeBron James and Russell Westbrook again, I'm assuming. Can the Cavs figure out a way to make it happen with Darius Garland and Colin Sexton? I'm not exactly too sure, but I guess we're going to have to find out. The other thing right now is that the Cavaliers have had a lot of money issues for a very long time. They've had to pay Kevin Love $30 million per season. Many years where it's just becoming a big issue. Now they've had to extend Jarrett Allen to $20 million a year just because players are getting overpaid so much now, where Jarrett Allen's $20 million per year is really not that much of an overpay anymore. And in today's game, like a year from now, Jarrett Allen will probably be making like the league average at this point, which is crazy to think about. And when you see Michael Porter Jr. just signed like a $40 million per year deal, and this guy is not a proven NBA dude at all, like he's still very young and very raw, to see he go on like a supermax like that, you can only imagine to think what Colin Sexton's going to be going on. And the Cavaliers already have money issues, and they haven't had a free agency since I can remember, where they've actually had some cap flexibility. This year, they had no cap flexibility. And you might be like, how is a team so bad like the Cavs not having any cap flexibility? Here's how. Kevin Love, $30 million a year. Jarrett Allen now, $20 million a year. Cedi Osman, who had multiple DNPs, 8 million a year. You had Larry Nance was on 11 million a year. Ricky Rubio now 18 million a year. And then you trade Nance and you bring in Markin, and I believe they kind of just traded Nance and used like I think it was like the mid-level exception or something they threw in there. And they got Lauri Markkanen, who is now on 18 million a year. This team is never going to have cap flexibility. If it gets rid of Kevin Love and then extends Colin Sexton to 30 million a year, which I think it will be most likely doing, this team's never going to have flexibility. And that's just the realism about it. The team's always going to be getting their players through trade, which, hey, maybe that has to happen because it's Cleveland anyway, and it's not really an established team without LeBron James or Kyrie Irving. It's really going to be interesting to see how this, of course, all goes. Again, I don't think the Cavaliers should give Colin Sexton the max just yet. I think they need to wait and see how he goes with Darius Garland this season. Because the Cavs, realistically, whether or not you want to be that guy that just says the Cavs suck or not, realistically, the Cavs have built their best team that they've had since LeBron James left. The Cavaliers have had multiple years where they've had no depth, and like Cedi Osman has been in their top 6 players. To this offseason, building a team where Cedi Osman isn't even in their top 10 players anymore. Cedi Osman went from last year being like their 6th man for the first part of the season to completely dropping out of their rotation to now the thought of giving Cedi Osman a minute might be a little bit like of a big call, because I don't know if he'll even get a minute here and there. And he's still making 8 million a year. Like, it's ridiculous. But hey, Colin Sexton, if the Cavaliers can win, realistically, as I said, it's the best team they have had since LeBron James has left. They have built a really nice team. You think about it like this: Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, Kevin Love, Ricky Rubio, Lauri Markkanen, Dylan Windler. That is a really good 9-man rotation. Like, that 9-man rotation is pretty good. That 9-man rotation, like, if you compare that to Chicago's, obviously Chicago's is way better because they've got more star power here and there. But then, as we know, a team like Chicago, who are knocking on the playoff door, don't have a good 9 or 15-man rotation at all. In fact, their best player after their, like, good 8 rotation is, like, Elijah Johnson. But we look at the Cavs, they've been able to bring in dudes like Denzel Valentine, who did play for Chicago, that I think with a fresh start could actually be a bit better. They've still got Cedi Osman, who I think needs to definitely prove himself this season. I think could actually be a solid rotational piece if he can get back on track. Kevin Pangos, who is a dude that is like 28 years old, a really good player overseas that is being compared to Campazzo. If he can get some minutes, he's going to do well. There is no reason why this Cavaliers team shouldn't win more games. It only won 22 games last season. I expect it to win about 32, maybe 32 to 35, I'm assuming, if they can stay off injuries. This Cavaliers team should not be that bad anymore. Realistically, it should not be that bad. But if it is bad, Colin Sexton, I think people will start pointing the finger to Colin Sexton. Because if he averages 27 points per game and the team's still bad, then you might be like, oh, well, 27 points per game, that's so good. But then there are clearly other issues underlying it. Other players have come out and called Colin Sexton a hog. Other players have talked trash to other Cavs players saying, you know, he's not going to pass you the ball. If Colin Sexton has that season, he's not worth the max. But if he can have a season where maybe he doesn't score many more points this season, maybe he still averages 24 like he did last year. But if he can get the ball movement going and actually start playmaking a little bit more and, you know, passing the ball off and getting players open, like we know he can, then there is no reason why the Cavaliers won't be a good team this season. And if he can do that, then maybe Colin Sexton is worth the max. I would think right now that Sexton is probably worth the max if Michael Porter Jr. is getting paid $40 million a year. But hey, Sexton's going to prove himself. He can put up all these stats he wants. But if the Cavaliers are not winning games, then those stats legitimately mean nothing. It's not a one-person game, right? This is legitimately not a one-person game. Some people have to realize that. Like, a lot of big Sexton fans have to realize that. Sexton is not the team. And that's a complete fact. For the Cavaliers to succeed, they need to work together as a team. I think the offense needs to majority run through Darius Garland, which is very clear to see. Colin Sexton might need to take a step back for a little bit, but when they need him to be a scorer, he needs to be a scorer. But when they need him to be a playmaker and get that ball movement going, that is what he needs to do. And that is what is going to be the keys to success for Colin Sexton and what will warrant him getting a potential max in the future. Of course, I would very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Do you guys think Colin Sexton is worth a max contract? Are you guys happy that the Cavs are not trading him anymore? As I said, I'm pretty happy we're not. I'd like to see how he goes this season and hopefully he plays well and hopefully the Cavs win some games so Colin Sexton can get paid. Or do you think the Cavaliers should put Colin Sexton back on the trade block and potentially trade him? Of course, I would very much like to know all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channel and my IRL/vlog channel. Don't forget to check out my podcast as well if you haven't already, which I will be linking all of them in the description down below. But as I was saying, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.